Welcome back to Beyond the Stars with Tim and Jeff.
Welcome to mysteries, laughing shadows, twisted themes. JeffMara and Tim Tactical, yes it's real, yes it's real.
Tim, I heard you were in Japan. Tell us all about it.
I'd love to. Well, first of all, thank you for having us back, and everyone at the community, every fan of Beyond the Stars. So excited to see everyone here again. Yeah, we made it. We were on a big world tour. I think I've visited over 8 countries in 2 months, which was a lot, to be honest. And we did another All Shift Happily Now contact event. So for everyone who's new, we're using a method that the German government, but other governments too, in the First World War, they used that in order to get information and so on and so on. So it's a little device that we rebuilt from the 1910s, and it's a so-called CAT, a consciousness-assisted technology. It uses a pyramid, and it directly connects to ET beings that have far more sophisticated technology, or even very strong telepathic senses, and they infuse that little device with words and messages, and we get messages from that. And we had some spectacular ones in Japan. We had 3 events, one in Kyoto and 2 in Tokyo. And what that is about, that is what we're going to talk about today. But Jeff, before we go into that, there's something spectacular which you and I have worked on last week, and because we do know that this the Beyond the Stars show has so many fans, and we made a cute little merch with the nice, sweet ET and the Beyond the Stars logo upon it. It's adorable. And it's out now on your shop because you make cups, mugs, phone covers, and shirts and so on. And it's really affordable and it's kind of cute. So if for all the fans out there, we have made that, and it's cool.
You might be able to see it just above us, or I guess maybe below us in the YouTube shelf. So if it's there, click on it and go to the website and check it out.
I think the shirt is 20 bucks, so it's super affordable, and it's fun. It's for all the fans of the Beyond the Stars show. Very nice to have. So back to Japan. Yes, we made it over to Japan. We have quite a large Japanese All Shift Happily Now Shifuku, we call that, into divine bliss. The Japanese form of what we call All Shift Happily Now as the mantra is into divine bliss, Shifuku. And we used that machine. It was fantastic because what we didn't know, we're still using that as a prototype. So many people have asked me, Tim, can we get this device? Can we do stuff at home? And at one point, I'm probably going to release that technology too, but we're still, testing things out, and it's fully unscripted. So when we do these things, we have a certain routine. We, dial in psychically and do cleansing techniques and so on, and dial into like a friendly realm, because that's the best protection you can have in the universe anyway. Adjusting your frequency levels and knowing that the person who's going to use the board on the other side is going to be nice. And apparently ET species are piling up because there is no one else than us contacting ETs out there. Well, the majority of people on the planet are still debating if or if not these things that are flying 20,000 miles in the sky are really UFOs. We are already talking to them in these All Shift Happily Now events. And it's fascinating because it's the first time ever we do that in Japanese. We didn't know what's going to happen. We had the situation before that when we use English language, that sometimes ETs come through, or the device is giving out words that are just gibberish. And from that, we do know, oh, this ET, for example, doesn't speak English. And then oftentimes we have to restart the contact and so on. And this time we were dealing with something that I personally have never, ever thought that we're going to make contact with, because in my life, I always like I thought it was mythological. That it's like more of like something that different tribes and histories have talked about. Because what we were connecting to suddenly was a dragon spirit. And now it doesn't seem unlikely because Japan and lots of different cultures around the world, they still have in their folklore, they still have the dragon and as a mystical guardian, a protector. In the Western world, oftentimes dragons are associated, with those beings that the night comes in and slaughters them, which apparently has a lot to do with certain reptilian beings that claim to be, dragons, but they're not, and they're also not super friendly, but quite honestly, I was so surprised because I never thought that we got messages from a mythological creature in a way, but we did, and I learned so much about these things. Apparently, when we were doing that in Kyoto, the being that spoke to us was saying that it's a protector of the city of Kyoto. And I didn't know these things because, it was I was kind of new to the whole mystery of Kyoto. But Kyoto indeed has a long, thousands of years of tradition of contacting and worshiping and summoning dragons. Whole of Japan is full of dragons as like the protector energies. There are other tribes, Mexican people have and Chinese people and so on. There are different human tribes around the world that actually have, ideas of what resembles dragon energies. But we were talking to one, and it was fantastic. And the interesting thing is, and that is something we want to talk about today, is the dragon explained to us that they can be invoked, they can be summoned for protective purposes. And they actually ask us that. I asked, can I tell that on Jeff Mara's podcast? Can we talk about that on Beyond the Stars? And they said, yes, please share this message that I'm going to give you now. Please share that with the world, because dragons, from their perspective, used to be ancient divine guardians of the world, and they kind of, they have fallen away from Earth through the forgetting, through the different historical events that happened in the last few thousand years. And they said now is the time to reawake these protective forces, and they would like for us to do that as the spiritual pathfinders that we are.
I've had a couple previous podcast guests talk about dragons, and I think my most recent one said that they're going to be returning.
That is exactly what they told us too. And I was kind of surprised because, well, you and I are friends, and I called you after the event, and it was fantastic because you were saying, Tam, I just had a guest here who was saying the same thing, and I was like, I never ran into a dragon in the in these times. So for me, it was spectacular. And there are some things that tell me that it's definitely more to it than I could have known. Right? I was operating the machine, but I didn't know about dragons so much, and I also don't speak Japanese. I'm trying, I'm learning, but I'm not really. I don't really speak Japanese. So the name of the dragon was Iwasa, and it's spelled out. It came out, and I thought it's just a name or something, but apparently it means throning in a stone formation. So that is basically the Japanese word, and it all comes down to the fact that dragons in the Japanese mythology are always residing either in water, lakes, or mountains or stone formations. So the one that we were talking to apparently is throning inside of a stone formation. And since I'm not typing the Japanese stuff in there and I don't even know these things, so even having that as like coming out of the machine is very reassuring for me as well.
Well, basically, a dragon is just a giant reptilian. Do you see any link with the commonly known reptilians and dragons?
First of all, I got to say that, I worked in governance projects, and there was contact with, reptilian or reptile species, some of which are the most amazing beings, that evolution has seen. But there are some that are, malevolent, and we have, thousands of people out there who had bad experiences with that particular type of reptiles. And this particular one is often claiming that they are related to dragons, but more of like the ones that the knight would come and slay, and we've seen these things. But with the dragons, what I've noticed is we do know like Mexico and other tribes are talking about something very similar. We do know, for example, that snakes often are representation of how energy works, because they create a little bit of like a piezoelectric current, especially if they are making love with each other. They create a little bit of like a field around themselves. So instead of using, a yellow lightning arrow that people nowadays use in order to indicate electric current, ancient people were indicating that using like a snake symbol, waveform, because the snake is doing that. The pharaohs had the snake in front of their third eye and so on. So I personally think that we're talking more about like an, interfrequential being that is more of like a wave nature, or maybe an electrical elemental nature, or something like that. I personally, I don't know, but I personally don't think that we're talking about a reptile being with scales that is actually flying in the air. I think it's more of like a being that is inside of a different dimension that can, however, communicate and interact with our dimension. Because what we do see all around these ancient Japanese temples is that they invoke and summon dragons and dragon energy in order to protect what's inside of the main temple. And I believe that that is actually more accurate what we're actually talking about. It's not a reptile being, it's more of like a mythological, energetical uh, being that is still true, still there, and still interacting with us.
Do you feel that the dragons are limited only to our planet, but in a different dimension, or are they extraplanetary?
Fantastic question, Jeff. From what the Japanese tradition told us or tells us is that dragons are basically protectors of the evolution of consciousness. They are the protectors of the evolution of mankind, of the divine, and so on, and that is their service to the universe, per se. And through that, they often reside in either lakes or in mountains, in winds and so on. So it seems to me that it's like a very real being, but it's more of an elemental being, or a being that kind of like lives in a dimension between our dimension and other dimensions. What they told us is exactly what your guest told us as well, that the time of the dragon is happening again. And they wanted us to know how to actually invoke and how to summon the dragon for one's own protection. They, for example, said, I often ask that. I often ask, hey, do you guys know what we are doing with All Shift Happening Now? Which, for everyone who's new to Beyond the Stars, and to me, it's a soul movement, right? The idea is, hey, we are all part of the source that is creating this reality field. We can actually uplift that reality field by creating impulses in the quantum world. So basically, that's how I understand our job and our mission here, in order to make this shift that we are part of right now, and that Everyone tells us for thousands of years we are going through a shift on planet Earth, and we are going into a new level of consciousness, a new level of reality, and it's already happening, right? When we switch on the television, the Pentagon is talking about it. We have all these hearings. We have thousands and thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of people who are, seeing orbs, who are seeing ETs, who are video recording UFOs and so on. So the reality that we used to know is changing. We're shifting, and with all shift happening now, I think, I believe, and I tend that we all shift into a happiness, into a better reality, and because we're all parts of something, and we're all part of the divine will. And the dragons are protectors of this divine will. They've always been. So what they told us is, if anyone in our community, anyone in the Beyond the Stars community, anyone watching, ever needs some type of protection, some type of a good spirit, we can call them in. And this particular one was telling us, please use a tone, like a tuning fork, for example, and say their name, which is Iwasa. But anyway, that's the way to invoke it. And I actually have one here, so I can quickly demonstrate that. So what they were telling us is, like, use one of these tuning forks and then just basically create a tone, and in that tone say Iwasa, so that the dragon spirits in whatever dimension they are living is actually hearing that and can interact from their dimension to our dimension, and can be an active protector of whoever is watching this video. And I think that's so spectacular and so beautiful that we definitely have to talk about that.
Did the dragons happen to say anything about the shift that's occurring?
Well, they were saying that the time is happening right now, that we are moving towards a new paradigm of reality. And actually, each and every ET being, ever since, one of the reasons why I came forward was when I was in the programs, every single ET being that we had contact with, they were very concerned, and they were telling me and everyone else too, hey, every 15,000 years, the planet is going through a reality shift. It's going to be basically our consciousness coming to a point where we can't be concealed inside of this reality field anymore, and we just break free. But that can be great for people, but it also can be horrible for people too, because it ultimately means that the borders between what we perceive as outer reality and inner reality are going to merge. And then people become immediately the manifesting force of their reality. And that is great for people who are like, I want my life to be happy. I want to live in happiness. I want to be, I want to fly, I want to levitate, I want to do these things. That is great because that gets accelerated. But then there is also, the installation on planet Earth, which, talking about reptiles, was something that has been placed here in a malevolent way. And then people are watching media and, getting into all types of fears and so on. And that can interfere with what they're actually manifesting, which can bring them into a point of reality that they don't want to be in. So there is a countless amount of beings that associate themselves with us, because ultimately we're all coming from the same universe, and they're all telling us the same thing, like, please purify your mind, please ask for support so we can help you, we need your permission. And open these doors for us so we can interact. And then please learn how to modulate energies for your well-being. Learn basically how to structure your reality so that you're actually going into a place that is good for you, and heaven on earth, basically.
Last time you were in Italy, you encountered a reptilian being, and then this time a dragon being, which to me is potentially another reptilian in a way. Do you think that the reptilians are beings that are either living under the earth or just around us in a different dimension?
It depends. So when I was working in these advanced projects where ET beings and so on was, something they investigated, they actually had horizontal ETs and they had vertical ETs. Horizontal is everything that's kind of on the same plane. Anything that can walk on Earth, maybe with a little device, maybe they need a little bit of like oxygen or they breathing something else. But it's basically they are carbon based or at least some type of element that could be hosted here. And then you have vertical beings, which is anything that is beyond this dimension, beyond this dimension. So a dragon, I would say, is being, at least for now, I don't know, but at least for now, something that seems to not appear physically in our reality, but it can interact with our reality. We can receive messages from them. They can do something in the after or the behind the veil, actually, in order to help us, to support us, and so on. Maybe when the planet is, changing, reality is not fixated. Reality is a shifting process. It's a process in a quantum universe that you, I, and everyone who's observing reality is actively changing and interacting with reality. So the thought of like, oh, there are natural physical laws that are undeniable and unchangeable, that's not true for the universe. Everything is changeable. Everything will change over time. That's constant. So ultimately, we can come to a place or a point at one point where all these other beings that might right now not be able to be hosted on the planet might be walking here. Other ETs that are already, very similar to humans, maybe even similar looking, they're already here. They already walk upon here. The reasons why reptile species are one of the ones that occur very often on planet Earth, and lots of people out there have stories about them, meeting them in dreams or even having encounters and so on. The reason for that is because they have a long history with humans. They are very close in many cultural and many physical ways too. And if you think about what's happening on this planet, we have about 7 billion humans on this planet, but we have about 100 billion reptilian beings on this planet, so lizards and everything like that. So there's a huge amount of these beings, this energy already on the planet, in an undeveloped developed state. But ultimately, that kind of like brings these species together at certain points.
The planet has a lot of mythical beings like dragons and fairies and whatever else is out there. Do you think all these beings or all these mythological stories have some basis in reality?
Interesting question, Jeff. In the programs, we often said there must be a dimension where unicorns are real. That's something we often joked about. We've never met one. We never met a mythological creature like a unicorn or something. But ultimately, everything in the universe, if you think about the wide range of what is happening in the universe, everything that in some way can exist does exist somewhere. Most ET species that we talked about this phenomenon because we were interested in that. I'm interested in that too. Most of these ET species said there is kind of a pool of potential that might or might not come into reality depending on your own choices. So while there might or might, Schrodinger's cat, right? Is the cat still alive or not inside of the box? We only know when we open it. And that's kind of the same with these mythological creatures. I personally believe when studying these different ancient civilizations and ancient traditions and so on, there are things that repeat themselves. There's moments where beings have experiences, paranormal experiences with other beings. For example, there are little beings in the Indian tradition that are kind of like living in a crystalline world, and they are kind of like influencing this world too, because they are overlapping in a way. They don't appear here, but they are here, and they are working there, and they are creating stuff in this crystalline world. And then you have stories about dwarfs, right, in Ireland and so on. You have the hidden folk in Germanic traditions, where they are talking about the same beings. They resemble. There is striking evidence or resemblance in all these stories. So apparently there are some beings that make sense. And since we are here and we can talk about this paranormal stuff, I had a very paranormal moment in Japan too. Which was very fascinating to me because ultimately, yes, I can clearly suggest and say that ET beings are real because I know that I've seen that we worked about these things, we investigated and so on. Um, I cannot really say that about unicorns because they haven't been part of the program. But when I was in Japan after the three events, we then went on glamping. We actually wanted to go camping, but I quickly learned that I've never ever set up a tent before. And I didn't know how to charge my phone. And I realized there's no way to get food too in the middle of the Japanese forest. So we decided to go glamping, which was kind of nice. So we got the breakfast in the morning. But the area around Mount Fuji, where we went glamping, is haunted. I didn't know that, but I told the story in my community a few weeks ago, and people were saying like, "Oh, didn't you know that the area around there where you were, that is strongly haunted?" And what can I say, Jeff? It happened. It happened to me. So the story was that we were second day there, glamping or something, and uh, my partner, she was suddenly screaming. She was screaming, and I was awake too. In the middle of the room, in my third eye, in my vision, I saw like a being with a weird looking whitish head and a long elongated neck or something that was just floating around and so it was inside of my third eye, and I woke up to that, and I heard this voice of this being that was like, "Ooh, it's so much fun! It's so much fun!" And she was screaming, and I was thinking like, what's going on? She was telling me there's like a being and it wanted to pull me out of my body. And I was like, that's interesting because I just saw a being in my third eye in the middle of this dark room. I could see that and I heard the sound too. So next morning, I was kind of drawing that on my phone or a tablet or something, and I went to one of the local stores, and what they did was they pulled up a frame. They were looking at that and was like, "Oh, this is Japanese demon." And they pulled up a frame, and in the frame was from 1642. This was an ancient frame. It was the same being. It had this weird elongated neck and the weird face too that I saw earlier, you know. And these are paranormal moments that you can't really explain. It's a weird moment to see these things and never ever encountered that before. And then next day someone is like saying like, yeah, people are telling this story and they're encountering these beings for hundreds and hundreds of years around Mount Fuji. It's a very active area. So if you're asking me, I would say yes, there is some parallel dimensions with all types of beings that are living there, and some are essentially uh, only occurring in certain areas in the world, just as much as koalas only appear in certain areas, and kangaroos only in Australia, and so on. Because I've never ever heard about this type of what they call a demon, a Japanese demon or something. I've never heard about that.
And you probably never want to encounter it again, right?
It wasn't. I mean, it was kind of scary for her, I think. For me, the story goes that these beings can tend to be either annoying or vicious, sometimes even, malevolent or playing tricks with people and so on. I didn't find it like from the impression that I had in that moment. And again, it's all in the middle of the night, dark room, and so on. I didn't feel that it was like something terrible or something, but it felt like almost like your super drunk friend who's like getting on everyone's nerve because they're so overstimulated. That was kind of like the impression that I had, that it would just, try to pull her out of the body and just fly around because it was fun or something. But not, not empathic enough to realize, oh, there might be a human and they don't necessarily like to be pulled out of their bodies.
I would assume once you realize that it's a lower frequency being, you could just tell it to leave and it would probably go away.
Yeah, 100%. That is again one of probably the most widespread and the most effective way to defend yourself against everything, right? You yourself have a certain frequency and you can defend yourself. Grace, for example, in the programs, they were saying one of the reasons why they put narcotics or a narcotic frequency on people, basically putting them into like a sleep paralysis in the middle of the night, is because they encountered the extreme power that the human emotion can have. So when the human that had no previous experience with any grays, when they would see and encounter a gray and get and freak out, they create such a strong emotional energetic field that the grays, with all that technology and all their sophisticated techniques, had issues staying in the room. They would be just blasted out of the room frequential wise because the human would be overreacting. So what they nowadays are doing or used to be doing is like putting people into this kind of like sleepy phase where they at the end, they might get scared, but they aren't able to move their bodies. They aren't able to scream. And after that, they're missing some time, and then they think, was it all a dream, and so on. So that is currently the way that they, worked around these emotion. But yes, the best thing to defend yourself is knowing that we are producing a frequential field around us, and this nothing can hurt us as long as we know how to modulate these things and how to uh, you know uh, be the boss in the situation. It's our reality field anyway.
Recently, I've had quite a few guests talk about their encounters with praying mantis beings. Have you had any encounters with them?
Yeah, that refers to the second event that we had. That was the first event. What event was in Kyoto. After that, we even had a temple tour, and it was fascinating because the temple next to the building where the event took place had two gigantic dragons that were in the middle of the altar, and they were basically the most sacred elements of the temple and so on. So it was fascinating to me how everything after the event came together, things that I would have never assumed would be possible, from the words that came out of the machine being legitimate Japanese, meaning something. Then the story about the dragons that were in the temple right next to the venue and so on. That's very special to me. I've even for someone who's had all these extreme events and experiences in his life, it's still something very interesting to me because it's a new component. And the second event that we had was in Tokyo, and it was fascinating nonetheless because um, we had contact with another being, and it was praying mantis species, that was telling us that they are currently on a ship, close to the planet. They were saying that they use telepathy and they're observing what's going on planet Earth. Don't yet have any plans to interfere or to interact, but also maybe they would, they said. So they're very benevolent beings, and observing what's going on here. But it was very fascinating too, because I don't assume right away because the variety of beings that sometimes speak through the machine that we have is gigantic. Some of which are so exotic that it's very complicated for us to comprehend what's going on. In Italy, that which you were referring to, we had a being that was inside of an elemental being, a liquid that would burst into droplets and then communicate with all these droplets as individualized consciousness whenever it felt lonely. So that's a fascinating but very exotic form of consciousness of life in the universe that you wouldn't necessarily think of. So I usually try to approach them with, questions and get as close as possible to comprehending what type of life we're talking to. And it was very embarrassing, to be honest, Jeff, because by we could not figure out what type of being it was. We were asking like, "What type of color do you have?" And they were like saying like, "Yeah, we are like green and but also like shiny and blue and purple." And we're like, "What type of being is like a little bit of green and a little of blue and a little bit of purple?" And then I was asking, is there any animal on this planet that is, resembles your appearance? Because Earth is a fantastic and interesting planet because it has such a variety of different animals that all in at one point have evolved, family members somewhere, species in the universe. For every lizard here, there is another, evolved lizard. For every uh, dolphin here, there's another species that is, an evolved form from that too. So we were asking that, and they were saying like, yeah, 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 we do have like, unevolved beings here that look like us. And then we started guessing, and we came up with everything from horses to rep lizards to donkeys, even donkeys, you know. But no one even came up and asked and said insects. But we were like guessing and thinking like, how can a donkey be blue and green and purple? And then once it hit and we knew, oh my gosh, are you guys insects? And they were like, yes, we are insects. We are actually praying mantis. And then we realized, like, yeah, depending how you look on a chitin shell of an insect, you either have, purple, greenish reflections, and so on. So it was very fascinating. And they were telling us that they're, benevolent, but observing what's going on the planet. Very psychic beings. They told us, Tim, when you are on Beyond the Stars, tell everyone that we are here. We are observing you. We're probably not going to do anything, but we are happy to answer questions. But usually we don't appear here. So if you like to have contact with us, we can appear in the audience dreams. So we can, if someone is calling that, we can infiltrate your dreams and send messages through a dream. So if you want to experiment with that out there, so let us know and write a comment down below if you have like any type of praying mantis dreams. Let us know the messages.
Well, how do we request them to be in our dreams? Do we just say it out loud?
Yes, that's what they told us. So they're extremely strong psychic beings, to the point that they actually they could talk like using sounds, like click sounds, but they don't even talk anymore. They're basically using all types of like psychic telepathy and so on. So what they told us is if anyone in the audience wants to contact us and has, serious questions before going to bed, call us in, ask the question, go to sleep, repeat that a few more times so that we are, most certain where you are and can send you messages back. And then over time, you will have a dream of us, and hopefully you remember our dream, and there we will give you the answer, as long as they have the answer, because some species don't.
I want to backtrack for a moment and talk about your machine, especially since I've never seen it. But it sounds like to me that you asked questions and the beings talk to your machine and then it prints out words. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it gives us the words. Right now, it only works with the English language because that is the characters that we're using. But that's essentially how it works. They can spell and print out the words and give us the words, or even utilize different other things. We have a little bit of a bar where it's like 0% and 100%, so they can like move the bar to. So, for example, the praying mantis species was very actively using this bar in order to indicate how much green they have in their shell and how much purple they have and how much blue and so on. So some beings are very precise with that. It always depends. It's the one of the most fascinating things to me is that you never have the same experience with a being using the device in the same way. Some of them are using it in a very creative way, and we ran into a species that was never using no, for example. They were never telling us no. They were always just giving us portions of yes. So if we would ask them like, are you in this dimension? They would say like 30% yes, which is an interesting thing. It's like, how can you be 30% here and 70% not? So how is that? It's that to me is like a very interesting, an interesting fact about how beings communicate.
So when you were in Japan and you were asking questions, would it print out the answers in Japanese using English letters? I guess you'd call it phonetically or something.
Yeah, that partially was the case. So we had multiple. We didn't know how it's gonna go, because again we're still in this prototype phase where we're testing out things before we give it to people or explain it to people. We didn't know how it's gonna go. Japanese has like three different character systems, which is the Chinese characters, the typical Chinese the font that and then they have like a Japanese font that they also use, and then they have Romanji, which is basically the way to write Japanese words in Roman ABCDE letters. And whenever the being was asked in Japanese, the dragon, for example, they used Romanji. They used basically letters from A to Z in order to express things. But we also had beings, where we were asking and saying like, "Hey, can you speak Japanese? Can someone in the audience ask a question in Japanese?" And then we sometimes had beings that were saying yes, and we had beings that were saying no, and we even had one time a being that was saying, "Yeah, we can speak or understand Japanese," and then when I was asking, well, is it okay if we're now switching to Japanese? They were saying no. So it can go any direction.
Well, my point is when these beings are answering you in Romanji, that's something that you couldn't have faked because you don't even speak that language, right?
I don't speak Japanese, and for me that is a very reassuring moment. So when the dragon came through and we were asking, "What's your name?" or "How do we call you in?" It gave us the Romanji words for Iwasa, which again means throning inside of a stone formation. That's what the Japanese words mean. I didn't know that. I just saw that suddenly the audience, they were all kind of like turning white and they were like all kind of like a little bit shocked. And I was like, what's going on? And then they were saying like that's a real, Japanese word, two Japanese words actually. And it was very meaningful for them, but I was the last person in the room to ever get it because I didn't know.
That's amazing. And Tim, I discovered today that before you joined the governance sector, you were in law school. How did you go from being a law student into this career of spiritual exploration?
spiritual exploration came in the last 2 years, actually. Before that, yeah, I've very conservatively actually had two studies. So I was in law school and at the same time working for studying governance too. Anything how to set up a state and all these things. And I graduated on exit strategies and thesis on how to exit out of the Afghanistan war and these things. That was basically my academia career, and I was recruited while still studying. So I was doing two full-time studies at the same time and then a full-time job too, which I have no idea how I actually did that. But that was my story was that I then went to like a recruiting thing and I got the job, and no one ever told me that I'm gonna be investigating ET relationships or anything like that. But it over time developed into that. So my first experiences was that, people came up with documents, and I had to do like a study on historical medieval things and topics. And then over time, more and more ET related stuff was like sprinkled in, like documents came and documents were telling that there are ET beings that this person in 1603 has seen in a forest or something, but the document would be then in like eclectic or like religious Latin, so I had to translate it first and so on and so on. And I think over time nowadays I think those were tests in order to figure out how would this guy react towards a document that is stating, oh, there's some reptilian species, or there's a 7 feet tall insectoid that this person is writing about. And I didn't react upon it at all. And I think that was the one of the qualifications that then over certain years brought me deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And then at one point, I was analyzing transmissions. So transmissions is everything that the government or any group is receiving and has evidence that it's a message. Anything that seems to be not a random noise in space, but anything that seems to be, an intelligent message or something. And then the big question is how to decode that, because messages can come in any type of form, not just the way that, humans are used to. And then the big question is always like, what is that message? What are they saying? And we were looking into lots of different things, and then it developed over time. And sometime I found myself inside of a container and sitting together with a gray.
It sounds like to me that you've been working in the government sector with ETs for quite some time, but you just started your spiritual journey 2 years ago. What was that pivotal moment for you that sent you in another direction?
I gotta say that I made like a 180-degree turn on many things in my life and many of my political and other standpoints and so on. As you can think, these groups are power oriented and they have their own ideas and so on and so on. What was kind of like a challenging moment for me was definitely the messages that we received about the world coming, getting into a shifting phase, a cosmological phase that would, uh, you know, um, bring change to the whole reality field that we're sharing in unprecedented extreme way. Basically, the way what they were essentially telling us is, hey, the conscious experience that all of you are having on planet Earth is coming to an end, and you're all gonna be, experiencing a new reality with different beings, with UFOs, with AI, with dimensions that are opening, and quantum physics, and all types of openings, and basically telling that this illusion that we're all sharing here in a certain way is not gonna last very long anymore. And they told us, hey, you guys had 15,000 years to prepare for that. We're just telling you that right now you have about 15 more years until it's happening. And guess what? That was 15 years ago. So we are right now in that phase. And no one can deny that anymore. There was if I told this story 10 years ago, people would be like, no. But now switch on the television and you see the Pentagon talking about all these weirdness that's going on. There are beings that people are seeing in the Miami Mall, then there's UFO sightings. I mean, every night you have guests that have some type of experience with how weird and how different reality is. Um, and for me, it was, I was in a phase and in an environment where everything was very alarmistic. It was very, it was always like the negative, thought and the negative perspective on that. Like it's dangerous, and it's terrible, and so on. But ultimately, when I connected to one life form that we called Being Six in the programs, which was so loving, and so I always called that passive love. It was like, hey, everything is gonna be okay. It's all good. It's nothing can harm you. It might seem scary, but just close your eyes, and it's all good. So when I perceive that things over time, not necessarily overnight, but over certain years, started to change within me, and started to change my perspective. And at first, I was very alert myself, so I went to the supervisors, or whatever you want to call that, and told them about these things, and said like, hey, I think we need to come up with a plan and inform the population, and show them, and so on. And they said like, no, 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 we don't have budgets for that. So I went back home and I thought like, oh yeah, they don't want to pay me for that because it's too expensive. So, but I'm feeling that very strongly. So I'm going to develop something myself so it's free. And then I'm presenting that to them. And I basically came up with the idea of creating a pseudo psionic network around the planet where everyone is bringing their consciousness in so that we can actually, shift happily. So that was the plan that I, gave them. I was heavily rebuked at that time. It was not that they didn't want me to work on that because of budget. They just didn't want me to work on it at all at that time. And I kept silent. I was silent for, again, 15 years until the Pentagon, just a few years ago, suddenly changed things. And suddenly everyone's talking about ETs, and people have congressional hearings. And, we are pretending that we are bridging this and pretending that this is all new, and so on. But ultimately, we do know this stuff already. And what we really need at the moment is that all these people, everyone, you too, come together and we put in the psychic energy in order to shift our reality happily for the individual being, for your personal timeline, because that's the most important thing for you. But the more people we have that shift happily in their individual life, the more we shift as a collective being to, as a collective, well, as a collective too. And that's what I'm currently doing. So I'm executing the plan that I was proposing 15 years ago to the governance sector. I'm now freelancing and doing that myself with beautiful souls, luckily.
A video came across my screen today about how the ultra wealthy are building bunkers. For what, I'm not sure. But if it's for this reality shift, are they doing so in vain because everything physical will be wiped out?
First of all, yes, that billionaires are right now building bunkers all around the planet They know that we are talking about a shift. It's not coincidental. It's not a trend or something. It's not that people are like, "Hey, do you have a bunker? Oh yeah, I should have a bunker too because it's cool," or anything. There is a source that is thinking, "Oh, I think when everyone knows that this plant is shifting, I think I can make a fortune by building bunker systems or even building private flights out of the atmosphere, right? We do have a lot of, if you have enough billions on your bank account, you can actually go and get an exit ticket out of planet Earth because Elon Musk and some other very rich people are building these flights out of away from the planet too. But is it going to help? That's the big question. And the real answer is no. It's a great business idea. You're making a lot of money with that, or they are making a lot of money with that. But ultimately it's not going to help them because what we figured out is that there is a collective association with the reality field. And just as much as there are entanglements in particles, and you can take one particle and put it on the other side of the universe, this particle is going to be still influenced by what's happening with the other particle as long as they're entangled. And we figured out that it's the same thing with consciousness too. As long as you are conscious and as long as you are consciously bonded to your earth particles in your body, you can get the body out of Earth, but you can't get Earth out of the body. So what's happening with Earth is always influencing them, no matter if you're sitting inside of a bunker, miles and miles underneath the soil, or if you are still on the surface level. So, and it's not that the event is going to wipe out the reality or anything. It is way more about us becoming the creative force behind reality. We are waking up to a moment where we are realizing that we are the dream, we are the reality field. And that can be a little bit disturbing for certain people because suddenly the effects that might be happening are beyond paranormal. And many people here have never tried and never trained. They've never invested into themselves. They've never, thought about these things, about reality and so on and so on. And they can be scared. They can be scared, and they can and they can also be easily manipulated by forces that try to make a bargain or have an advantage from that. So. All these things are issues. And, even first of all, I personally want everyone to have like a happy experience in the universe because that's our destiny. But then egoistically thought, it's still it's still our responsibility too, because the collective is also kind of like determining what's going on in the individual life as well, right? So if we have hundreds of millions of people who are, suddenly freaking out, and we talked about that earlier, the immense energy that the human emotion, has like an immense frequential impact. When they really get into that, when we're talking about like hysterical fear, for example, that's that's almost like a nuclear bomb. That's how strong these impulses are. And if you think that if God forbid, but if many people would have these types of experiences, it would be like almost like a chain reaction. It would be bad for the collective. So what I'm doing with All Shift Happily Now, what we are doing with All Shift Happily Now is doing it reverse style, right? We are teaching everyone to use their emotions and use their psychic powers to lift their own lives, which is great for everyone individually. But when many people do that and uplift their lives, it has tremendous and wonderful and beautiful effects on the shared reality. And I think, we can all agree that that is something beautiful, and we want that.
For the skeptics out there that dismiss these topics as pseudoscience, what one piece of evidence or argument from your experiences would you use to open their minds?
That's a fair question. The experience, which is has to do with the genetics of the species. The species comes from, certain ape genes and so on. It's an evolutionary advantage for ape species to neglect everything out of the normal. So when there are people and saying like, no, 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 this is not our reality, that is actually an advantage in a certain way because they are kind of blocking the reality shift in, they are kind of like slowing down that procedure. On the other hand, it's almost impossible to convince someone who's fixated on the idea that something is not the way someone else is saying. But to be honest, no one can deny that anymore. Even on television, we're talking about these things. We have video recordings. These are not necessarily real UFOs, in terms of ET UFOs. But at least they are showing and showing the people, that this technology is there. We're talking about stuff that is on video, that people have experiences and so on. Ultimately, it's not my goal to convince people, about ET realities, of ET realities, and it's also not my goal to, to push the ET agenda or, the ET revelation in any type of way. I personally think that the universe expanding into ET realities, and the moment will come. The moment is already there that we are, that we're very, very close to standing face to face with non-human intelligences. We already have, an AI system that every one of us is talking to, which is an intelligence outside of the human intelligence. It's happening. There's rapid changes going on currently that no one can deny, and I don't think that anyone is denying these things. The big question is now not anymore is it true or not? It is how do we deal with that? And that is where I'm coming in and where I'm seeing myself as a civilizatory trainer and all my education and exit strategies and being an agent in all these kind of things that came in. And then also I've, my heart has changed over the experiences and the years as well. I feel a lot of like caring for beings too. I want beings to be happy and to enjoy. I want myself to enjoy the universe 100%, but I wanted to share it with other beings. I want them to be happy as well. So my experience is it's not about arguing with people. It's about building something from what is there and then making it so precious and so beautiful and so heartwarming that people feel at home. And everyone around me and in the All Shift Happening Now community, and I believe everyone in the Beyond the Stars community too, I think they're feeling that. They're feeling that in their soul.
You said that 15 years is up, basically. So where is it, or how soon on the timeline do you see everything shifting completely?
I see it shifting every day, to be honest, and I personally, it's about the individual observer. What we learned from quantum science is the individual observer is changing the perception of reality. What they think reality is, reality over time becomes. So what I've experienced, again, I've always it's something that I'm learning too, is when I came here, I always thought everyone has the amount of experiences that I have, which is not, So I had to learn a little bit of a little bit of empathy for people and to make it gentle and yeah, take my time with people too. Everyone's on a different level of experience. Everyone has different, there are people out there that have been abducted. There are people out there that have seen UFOs. There are people that are watching Beyond the Stars right now because they had an incredible experience that they might think they can't talk to anyone else. And they are watching this and they feel, very confirmed in many ways. So there are these experiences out there. Everyone's on a different level, and the collective experience will be determined when every individual being is ready. We're talking about a critical mass. And I personally, I don't want the critical mass to be randomized because there's way too much nonsense going on in the human media system. There's way too much fear-provoking stuff that people are listening to on the radio or somewhere else. So what I want to have is I want those people out there who are already ready and who have a strong field and might even have experiences that are beyond what the norm stream has experienced yet. I want them to go into their responsibility. I want us all to come together and to uplift first of all our own reality, so that we have it nicely, because that is the most important thing in the universe first, that the helper and the supporter is stable. And once that is ready, everyone watching right now has a certain responsibility for their parents, maybe for their friends, for their family members, just to help them through the shift, to be there when someone has their first paranormal moment that can haunt these, other people. And maybe the people who are watching right now, they might have had their experience 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and they might be better. It might be, they might be good at these things. So everything that I do with Orsha Family now, all these events, I know we are not yet there that we can reveal, the technology. We cannot reveal photographs and all these things because it's political, and we have to take time and be gentle and so on, and flow with the agenda of the revelations that are going on behind the scenes as well. But ultimately, these events are made to have personal contact with other beings, harmless contact, right? It's everyone is like sitting there and experience something that is amazing, but it's harmless. It's a for all sides. It's a very nice way to communicate. Then the teachings that we're doing, which is like training people in psychic effects, training them how to defend themselves, how to protect their reality fields, and then also making them friends. That is something that I've been actively doing and believing in very much. I personally think the friendship energy in the universe is the most beautiful thing that can happen. I believe that very much. I value that more than interpersonal romantic relationships, because I believe friends are just, they never argue. Well, they can argue, but they're very quick in forgiving and so on. So it's a beautiful thing. So what I want to see is all these people out there, no matter if they had a near-death experience, no matter if they had a so-called abduction, no matter if they had seen an UFO, no matter if they are into paranormal stuff or something. I want them all to come together and realize that we are the designers of this reality. First, become stable, and we are here to support. We're here to support you. Become stable in your own reality. Be your best version. And once you're there, help these other versions too. Help all these other people, not by being a missionar or being like forcing them, convincing them or something, but by being there, by being an open ear and having open arms and saying like, yeah, I've encountered paranormal things, but it's not that bad. And here are some things you can do. And once you do these things, the universe is here for you to be beautiful. That's the lesson that we are learning right now on this planet, is we are delving into the moment of security, of knowing that the universe is actually benevolent and that we can trust, and we ought to trust the universe.
I want to let everybody know that this isn't a full-on season 3, but we will be back next week. And if you have any questions for Tim, be sure to type them in the comments section below, and maybe Tim will be able to answer them for you.
I would love to. Every Saturday, we do a live viewing all together. Jeff and I, we are in his chat right now when you're watching this. Unless you're watching the recording, there's a whole playlist on Jeff's channel too. And one more time, everyone, if you're a fan of our beautiful show, Please go ahead and get your t-shirt. It's just $20 or something, but it's cute and it's fun, and it's for the fans.
Well, Tim, it was great seeing you again, and I'll see you back next week.
Thank you so much, and happy shifting.
Welcome to Mysteries, Laughing Shadows, Twisted Themes. JeffMara and Tim Tactical, yes it's real, yes it's real.